All right, sorry about that. One of these days I'll master these live streams. Let me just check to see if this is working. Nope. Hold on. Hang on. Let's see.
Hang on.
All right, there we go.
Hang on. All right, there we go.
Perfect. Okay. So let me get my screen shared. That's the next piece here. Give me 1 second to do that. And then we're going to jump into some charts here. Okay. Boom. Share window. Boom. And I think we're good. Yay. All right. Let's roll and take a look at some charts. And the way I wanted to start is by sharing, you guys may have already seen this, but the tariffs, we know that the deadline for tariffs for countries that have deals made is July 9th. And now U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the tariffs will return to the April level with no deal by August 1st. So essentially there's an extension that's been provided. And as a result of that, what we have seen, and again, the only thing that we can really get a projection for right now in the markets is crypto, Bitcoin. And you can see Bitcoin did get a move off of that news. So we'll see if that's going to carry over into the trading week tomorrow, if we're going to get some green, but that is going to get rid of some of the uncertainty around tariffs for this week. And what a better place to start is just by talking about the broader markets, where we are and what we have in terms of data this week. And really, there's not a ton of data that we're going to get. Now, if you click on the calendar tab here for TradingView, it is going to show data that's being provided, but you could see it's not 3-bar news. The most important thing we'll get this week will be the FOMC minutes on Wednesday. That'll be at 2 p.m. So traders and investors will be parsing through that information to see clues for rate cuts, if it's dovish or hawkish. So be ready for that. But then Thursday and Friday, outside of some Fed speakers, there's not really much happening this week. Now, we will get some earnings that'll kick off this week, and it'll be next week when the big banks start reporting. But we do have Delta Airlines that will report on Thursday, and I think Wednesday we might get someone too that's so yeah, Delta Airlines is one I'll keep an eye on and watch. But it won't be until next week when we really start getting some of the bigger names reporting. And you could see if I just switch over here to the 14th, this is when we're going to get a lot of the banks coming in and reporting, and that will be on Thursday, Friday, I believe. Let me just scroll down here. Thursday, I think it's actually Friday. Let's just scroll. Let's see here. Man, there's a lot. But anyway, I'll be putting together a video just doing an earnings preview to get you guys ready. But that is going to be something fun and exciting to see the big banks report, to see the MAG report once again, and see if we're going to continue on this rally higher. And so we're just starting here with an SPX chart. So you can see that we've made new all-time highs, and this has just been a straight run up. That's pretty vertical. And again, what goes up must come down. It doesn't mean that it's going to come down this week, but eventually we are going to see a little bit of a pullback and a dip. But it doesn't mean it has to be right away. If you go back to, let's see here, whenever we pulled back in 2023 from August into October, you could see we had a really vertical move all the way up until April of that year before we got a pullback. And those pushes higher were pretty significant and steep. So again, the reason I pull that up is because just because we've run so hard doesn't mean that the pull has to be right away. We can still continue to push higher, and they could be little 2 to 3%, 5% dips that the bulls buy up and we continue to press higher. So just keep that in mind. And last week was a little unique because we were closed on Friday. We had a shortened trading day on Thursday. So you really had a lot compressed into just a few days, and you could see how low the volume was on Thursday. And so we'll see what we get on Monday, but there should be some optimism and a push off of that tariff extension information. And more than likely, we'll probably create a new all-time high. And some of the things that we want to be aware of, and again, I'll just come back over here to the data. So while there's not a lot of data this week, when we head into that middle of July, that's when we're going to get the inflation reports. We're going to get CPI on Tuesday. We should finally see those tariffs seeping into these reports and that data. And then Wednesday, we get PPI, so that'll be pretty significant. And then Thursday, we are going to get retail sales. And then on Friday, we'll get building permits, housing starts, Michigan consumer sentiment. So as quiet as this week will be, next week we'll have a lot more data and we'll get a decent move there. But again, the charts are bullish. We are due for a little bit of a pullback and a dip. And if you've been following the channel, you know that this red overlay that I have on here is following Trump's first presidency from when he implemented tariffs. And what happened after a significant drop like we had here, it was a grind up into new all-time highs before COVID hit and we dumped. So looking to see if we follow something similar to that, where we continue to push higher, have little pullbacks, grind up, peak out maybe around this 6,600 mark, and then from there we pull back. But the charts look very bullish. You can see that we are overbought on the RSI on the daily. Again, you did have a little bit of a decline in volume on Thursday, but that's to be expected with the holiday. But if you look at the volume prior to that, it's been pretty steady. So again, looking pretty strong. Heading over to the Qs, new all-time high on the Qs on Thursday as well. Again, a little downtick in volume. We are overbought on the RSI. But again, things continue to look bullish here. We are due for a pullback. And again, you could look at last July too as an indicator for when it peaked out and it started to drop. And that was around, let's see, that was July 11th. So that's where we saw things really start to show some weakness. So just be prepared for that. Again, the beginning of July is pretty bullish, and then the second half tends to flip. So will we get something like this? We don't know, but it's something to be aware of. So the SPX, QQQ have hit all-time highs, but then when you hop over here to the Dow Jones Industrial, you see that this has not yet done that. So it is close, and it's had quite a strong push here. You've had 5 bullish days in a row where it just continues to push up. It's overbought on the RSI. Volume has been pretty steady. So I would look for this all-time high to be taken out this week. And then when you look at IWM, it is finally above all those moving averages, and it has a lot of runway here back up to all-time highs. And look at this candle on a weekly. That's a beautiful candle, very tiny upper wick here, which shows that there's really no selling interest at this point. And so the last area where we had some selling, we'd come back over to these candles from February and the end of January, these upper wicks here. So we'd want to watch between that 230 price area and 226.81 as an area of resistance where potentially we can get rejected. But there is a clear path here. This is like a runner in football getting the ball on a handoff, running, has nothing but open space in front of them. And so barring some type of bad news, bad data, IWM has a lot of room to continue to push up. And just jumping over here to look at Bitcoin. So I have this upper trend line resistance marked out that I said that in order for this one to push back up and make a new all-time high, would have to take this out. And we did get a close above it here on Thursday of last week, but you could see that there is resistance here. You do have some selling. We came back down. Right now we are above it. But what we want to see is this thing slowly push up out of here and make a new all-time high, challenge a new all-time high. And I do think Bitcoin has a little bit of a run first before it cools off. We have seen the volume steadily drop since February. You could see that it's just been lessening, but we'll see if that picks up here over the next few weeks to a couple months. And then just taking a look at some of the other tickers, indices, things that I follow. If you take a look at the dollar, you can see that that is way down, and we'd have to go back to 2022 when we were in a bear market for a lower value of the dollar. And that's more than likely attributed to the big, beautiful bill that was passed and how that's going to increase the deficit. So that drops the value of the dollar. And then taking a look at the VIX, we could see that the volatility indexes dropped quite significantly. We do have this little bit of support down here at 1608, where it's finding a little bit of support. But if it does take this out, we're going to get more bullishness in the market, because remember, the less volatility that's in the market, the less fear, and that pushes stocks higher. But then when we come over to the 10-year, we can see that the 10-year Treasury got a pretty decent sized green candle that came in here on Thursday. Again, more than likely related to the passing of that bill. And a higher 10-year does put pressure on stocks. So keep an eye on this one. Does it continue to climb? Again, you do have moving averages above it. You have that 50 up here. This 100 on the daily kind of held it in place. So it's just something to watch here over the next few days. And then the last one I'll take a look at here is TLT. This is the 20-year Treasury bonds, the ETF. And is this one, what I mentioned in my community today when I was doing my charting, is are we putting in some type of an inverted head and shoulders here, right? It's a funky looking one, but we are getting compression from the moving averages, and we do have quite a glut of volume nodes here on the VRVP, but you can see we're being squeezed in between this 100 and the 50. So this is going to build pressure, and is it going to squeeze it to the upside or the downside? And just looking at the pattern that's being put in place here, you would think that will follow an inverted head and shoulders pattern where we will break out. Now, it has quite a bit that it would have to work through to push, but let's say that we're going to peak out and top in the market and some weakness comes in, you could see some money flowing back over into this, and that could drive TLT higher. So just one to keep an eye on here over the next couple weeks as things play out. So just an overview of the broader markets right now. Things look bullish. We're obviously extended on the SPX. We're extended on the Qs. The Dow Jones is extended, even though it's not at all-time highs. The IWM is in a spot where it can run more. So again, it doesn't mean that a pullback has to come right away because markets are irrational, but we are getting into that area where we have to be defensive and say, all right, I need to make sure that I'm locking in gains, I'm locking in profits and protecting myself, because if we do get some weakness or some pressure that comes in, there's a lot of room for it to drop. And the other thing to point out here too is when you have a vertical move like that, a parabolic move like that, I mean, that's almost straight up, the corresponding drop can be pretty quick and pretty ferocious. So it's just something to prep yourself for. And the other way to think about it too is the market can't just go straight up forever. It's got to rest. It's got to pull back. It's not a bad thing. But I do think any pullbacks that we get here, at least for the next week and a half, they're buyable, but we also have to just be careful and cautious with what is going on. All right. So that's a look at the broader markets. Just a few tickers that I'll go over here, and I'm just going to check to see if there's anything in the chat real fast. If you guys have questions or anything, just go ahead and let me know. Put them in the chat, or tickers that you want me to look at, and I will do that for you. But I do want to go over some charts that look pretty interesting to me, and I'm going to start with Moderna. And this is one that has just been trashed. I mean, look at this drop here. Wow. I mean, so last summer, this thing was getting a decent push, but then it just started to tumble. And for the first time, and you have to go back to July of last year, Moderna has closed over the 100 simple moving average on the daily. All right. So that's pretty significant. being that that hasn't happened for a year. And you can see that it got hung up here on the 100 EMA, daily EMA on Thursday. But if we go above that, we could see that this has room all the way up to the 200 at $38.22. So I am going to be watching Moderna here to see if it could get a little bit of a run. And I will try and day trade this once I get a nice setup on the 3-minute, because there could be a quick pop. Now, this doesn't mean that would be committed to this ticker long term, but I do like where it is short term and what the potential is for it here in the next couple weeks. So definitely watching Moderna and how it has cleared that 100 moving average on the daily. Taking a look at the weekly here, nice candle. It did find a little bit of resistance there at the 20 EMA on the weekly. But again, if you get above that, it has room up to that 200. And then from that 200, you have the 50 SMA on the weekly where it can push as well. Let's take a look at Salesforce, because this is another chart that I really like here. Again, I do see a nice little inverted head and shoulders pattern forming. And within that, it does look like a bit of a double bottom here. But what I do really like about this chart is just the moving averages here. The 50 and the 20 are converging. We were in between them. We dropped below that 50, but it did find support on that 10-day and the 20 exponential moving average. And we do have this nice chunk of support. So Salesforce is one that potentially could get a nice move. And more than likely, what I see happen is probably a little bit more sideways movement, a gap up over that 100 where it will close. And then this thing should have some upside into that 297 area. So going to be watching Salesforce here to see if there's an opportunity, and, you know, potentially there could be some solid reward here. So just keeping an eye on Salesforce. And also too, you have these higher lows that are being made. So Moderna along with Salesforce, those are two that I'm watching for this coming week. Roblox is one that has just been parabolic straight up. I talked about the Grow Garden game that kids just love. My son loves it. His friends love it. And that's what's caused a lot of this excitement for this thing to push higher. Finally did get a little bit of a pullback there last week. Almost hit the 20, resumed higher. And so there could be a little bit more of a push up. It's going to report earnings on July 31st. And you can see the last time that this had a pullback after a nice run, it did correct about, let's see, what was that? 33%. So 33% drop from these highs would bring us down to about 70, was that $71, which would be a good opportunity to try this one long again down back here at the 100. So if we end up getting a pullback or correction, that would be a nice little area to go long once again, especially if everything pulls back. But man, Roblox has been on quite a tear, and it is still quite some ways away from its all-time high. So there's definitely more space here, but it might cool off first before it does that. Coinbase finally broke out here. We got a nice little retest back into the 10. You had a little inverted hammer pop back out of there. The volume has been decreasing on this. Is this going to get one more leg higher, maybe up into 400 before it pulls back down? Potentially. But if Bitcoin's going to push, it can lift Coinbase as well. But really, the fintech stocks like Robinhood, like Coinbase, have been having nice moves. You know, and it looks like Hood might be cooling off a little bit. So maybe Coinbase will pick up the reins and go higher this week while Hood takes a break. But this is just one heck of a move here on Coinbase. Just measuring that out from this candle here over a 4, 5, 6 day period. That one ran $128. So, man, I hope somebody out there was in that trade. Let's go over here to Apple. Apple finally getting some love here above its 100-day simple moving average for the first time since we have to go back to March. So nice move there. Again, this has room up to the 220s. You have earnings coming up for this one on July 31st. So keep an eye on Apple. If you see rotations out of Microsoft and other big boys, or Tesla, which looks like it's going to get hammered tomorrow, you could see this one push pretty quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Apple at 220 by the end of the week. It's looking pretty strong here. Tesla. So we have the feud continuing between Trump and Musk. And this time, Musk is starting the America Party. He's been critical of the big, beautiful bill, and he has been very vocal about that over the weekend. So we're probably going to see some backlash in terms of people dumping this stock. And we pointed out this double top pattern that came in last week. You did have a chunk of moving averages here serving as support, but we're probably going to gap down through these. Let's see if we open up down by this 100 simple moving average on the daily. If it opens below this with a gap down, then this thing could fall pretty quickly back down to where it was in April, down to the 250 range. So keep an eye on this one. I was saying today in my community that I'm not a buyer of Tesla until I could get it back down around 150. I know that's dirt cheap and I'm probably not going to get it. But just with all the volatility and erratic nature of this company, of Musk, it's just not worth taking. But if I could get it down here, to me, that's a significant value to just buy a chunk of shares and sit on. But for now, it looks like Tesla's going to be dropping. Adobe is a chart that I really like, another inverted head and shoulders, but I'm not ready to pull the trigger on this one yet. I've been studying this one, trying to set up a play. I don't see enough to give me confidence to take it yet. So I'm continuing to study to see what my play would be. But I do like the support that has shown up in this area along with this pattern here. And being that we do have that gap that could be filled up to 435, there is some reward here. But I just need to see some strength coming out of the structure, at least getting above the 10-day exponential moving average and above that 50. And if it could take those two out or even close above that 100, then I'd feel better. But right now, it's just not enough confidence for me in this trade. AMD getting a little bit of a retest back down into the 100 simple moving average on the weekly, and also its 10-day exponential moving average. And is that just a little bit of a retest before pushing higher? Quite possibly. We saw the volumes drop a little bit. It's no longer overbought. So maybe AMD is getting ready for its next leg up. Keep an eye on this guy. Amazon still have that gap overhead to fill here up to 234.77. And really just kind of a sideways moving type of week last week on Amazon, but there is still some room up here. And we talked about last weekend how rarely do you see Amazon get overbought on the RSI. And if it does, it doesn't stay up there very long before dropping. And you could see we got close to it last week, but it came right back down. So look for it to get back up here, probably hang out, and then come back down. And that's because Bezos always sells his shares when it gets extended up into that area. So interesting chart there on Amazon. Coming over here to Broadcom, we could see some bearish divergence with the RSI and just the price action as this thing moves up. So wouldn't be surprised if this one wants to start cooling off here pretty soon. That was interesting just from the chart study. And Celsius, this chart is interesting as well because we're getting up near that 100 SMA in the weekly, but you could see all these upper wicks coming in here, really just tiny bodied candles, and just saying that traders are maybe losing interest. They feel like this is maybe extended too far. It's got to cool off a bit. But if this would drop, this has built a nice region of support in this $33 area up to 39. So a pullback, something like this, and just kind of some consolidation chop around there would be a good place to try along. But it just looks like there's some lack of interest in Celsius in this particular area. CRCL, waiting to see if this gap can get filled here down to 135.71. After that huge move, it almost hit $300. It's just been pulling back, so it's cooling off. And, you know, I feel for the person or the person who tried to chase this one up here and is still stuck holding shares as this thing drops. I hope it comes back for you, but there's always somebody out there in that position. And I only say that because when I started trading, I would oftentimes be in that spot. So hopefully that's not you, but this one, I'd like to see this one get moving again because it was providing some great moves there. I mean, just look at this, you know, this candle here. What was that? 66 bucks. I mean, that's a day trader's dream. So hopefully we can get back to those days there on CRCL. Google, I really like the Google chart. Again, I talked about this last week. Some people might see a double top here, but I think this is just getting started. Above all the moving averages, tons of room above it. There's a gap to fill up here to 203.96. So actually, I want to move this up here to the top. Tickers I'm looking at, mRNA and CRM. But this one could get moving. Again, a lot of these other ones have to cool off. We see Apple building some steam. And again, going here to Microsoft up here near all-time highs. Wonder if we'll see money start flowing out of this one into Google. But I do like that Google chart. So keeping an eye on that one. Hood, you have a bearish Harami candle, inside candle. So looking for a little bit more of a retest back down. Could it come down to 88? Possibly. So watching that for a push lower on Monday. Meta, new all-time high last week. If I come over here to the weekly double top coming into play. But I'm not shorting this one. No way. It's been too bullish. So I'll wait to see what happens here. I'm not shorting anything yet in this market because there's just been a ton of strength, but we are starting to see across the board the characteristics of things topping, but you can't call the top. But we are seeing things come in that tell us, hey, be defensive, be prepared, because you could start to see a little bit of weakness come in and things start to drop a bit. All right. And I'm just going to go through a few more here. Marathon Digital Holdings, we talked about this inverted head and shoulders pattern. It finally broke out of that and now just has one more moving average to get through, and then it has plenty of room, and this thing is overdue for a move. So keep an eye on Marathon. Actually, let me move this one up too, because there could be an opportunity on Marathon. But again, we got to see what it does here at the 50. If it could break above that, it's going to have some space. So, and you did see a huge spike in volume there on Wednesday. So interesting chart there from Marathon. And let's look at a few more. NVIDIA, new all-time highs on NVIDIA at 160, 102. And you would think this one's going to cool off a little bit, maybe come back and just retest what used to be resistance here. Little sideways movement and then push higher. But for now, I'm kind of stepping away from NVIDIA and looking for some other opportunities. But congrats to all the NVIDIA bulls out there who made some money on this guy. Palantir, a little bit of a retest. And the thing I'm looking at with Palantir is all this thing does is make new all-time highs. And sure, it corrected 13%, but this could be ready to blast up out of here, and it could move pretty quickly and significantly. So I am keeping an eye on Palantir, and actually this was supposed to be at the top of my chart too, because if things start going again, and this is at what traders and investors see as a value, we'll see some push out of this one. So I'm interested to see what Palantir does. And let me see if there's anything else I want to look at. I'm just going through my charts. I think that's it. I'm just going to check to see if you guys have anything. If there's any tickers you guys would like me to look at. And if not, we will wrap up there. Any tickers you guys want me to look at? Ira, okay. Matt, how are you? Let me check here. I was trading this one back in the winter time. It's been a while. Oh yeah, look at that volume coming in. All right, so let's just do a quick analysis here. So all-time high up here at 28.34, and we're on the monthly chart right now. So we could see that we've had 3 solid months. Well, this month has just started here, but 2 solid months of a push higher. And let's just come over and see on the daily. Yeah, so I mean, the volume has been strong on this one, so which shows that there's significant interest here, and you could see how overbought we are. So this thing is very, very extended. If I'm looking over here at the news headlines, Iran acquires 2,400 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs in a $130 million deal. What's this one say? Iran achieves mid-year target for self-mining capacity. So it looks like it's had some positive headlines. I'm just going back to see the last few times that it's been this overbought and how long it's stayed there. So if we go back to June of last year, we could see that we pushed up. We kind of peaked out here on the RSI. It dipped and then did come back up and make a new all-time high. There's a little bit of divergence here. So this move may not be done, but you could see, just because it's so far extended, you could see a little bit of a dip. And if you had a similar pattern to what we have here, a little bit of a dip and a push higher, I'm just creating like this double top pattern that's over here. But then from there, maybe a little bit of rest, because this thing is pretty pumped up. And just to measure how far this thing has risen since its lows here from April, that's a 262% increase. So, man, if somebody would have bought here, at how much is that? 508. That's a heck of a return there. So, again, the chart's extended. The technicals say extended, that it's probably going to cool off a bit. But again, bullish markets in general can be irrational. I would just look at this double top that came into play last summer when it was overbought. Look for a little bit of a pullback. Maybe buy the dip off of the 20 if it can come back down there and ride it up to 19. But it looks like this one will need to cool off a little bit. Let me come over here to the weekly. And so there definitely is resistance too in this area from just looking. So this area from last July, that was 1571. And then you had that same resistance, 1579. So you finally closed above that. So you could get a little bit more of a squeeze here with this bullish candle closing above with a lot of bull volume. So this thing it technically can squeeze higher. So the chart looks strong. You don't want to be in it whenever it starts dumping. So, this is one where it could definitely be rewarding and it can push higher, but you would just have to be very tight with your stops to manage your risk so you didn't get caught in a trap. I haven't looked at this chart in a while, so I'm glad you brought that one up. Thanks, Matt. Visa. Jackie wants to look at Visa. Sure. Let's take a look at Visa. Visa, Las Vegas. All right. So here is Visa. Let's mark out its all-time high. Oh, so this thing just recently hit all-time high. And that was June 2nd. So again, this thing is pretty extended as well. Let's come over to the daily. Oh, but interestingly enough, if we look at the RSI on the daily, we are really in the middle of the road. So there could be some room here. Jackie, this is an interesting chart. Thanks for sharing this one. So if we see, we did hit that all-time high, dropped down, broke down below the 100 simple moving average, but there is a chunk of support here on the VRVP, and that's a nice candle close here that we got on Thursday. I would not be surprised at all to see a gap up tomorrow on Visa. I actually want to watch this one now because, I mean, that has all the signals to me of, all right, hey, this thing is going to gap up. Hold on, let me put this up here. Hang on. All right. Yeah. So we're above all the moving averages, and you have this gap to fill right here to, what is that? 369.86. So this thing could push and challenge of filling that gap, and then we'll see what it does from there. Can it make a new all-time high? Potentially. But this looks pretty strong. And again, the fact that we're not overbought on the RSI on the daily is pretty interesting. The weekly, we're not overbought there. And the monthly, I do think that okay, so we are, all right. So we're not overbought right now on the monthly chart RSI. So this one potentially could have some room here, Jackie. So I would keep an eye on this one. You know, what you want to watch for is if it does fill this gap, is it going to get a little bit of a retest pullback? But then what you really want to pay attention to is when it challenges those all-time highs, how does it respond? Does it get a real strong close above it and push higher? Or is it going to be a resistance point where it drops and just can't break through? It does have that earnings report coming up there towards the end of the month. So I do actually like this chart a lot. And I'll go on record to say, and I don't mind making a call, but just from my chart study, and I'm going to put this on here, and we'll check it out next week when we do the live stream. Gap up on Monday for Visa. That's just what it looks like to me. That looks like that's what we're going to get. I would say I don't think it'll completely fill that gap, but I think you could get like a $3 or $4 move at open tomorrow. So that would take us to that's 361. I'm going to put open at 361 on Monday. Let's see if I'm right. I'm wrong all the time. So, but that's just from my knowledge of the charts. That's what that's looking like for me. But I do like this chart a lot. I do like this. Yep. Matt, you're welcome. All right, guys. Well, that is all for today. Got a lot of content coming out. The summertime has been a little different just with all the trips and things, but we'll definitely have some stuff coming out this week. If there's anything I can help you with, just please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next weekend for another live stream. Take care, everyone.